Well, I think we'll only see a definitive end to the scandal when there's some accommodation made both to President Trump and his supporters, as well as an end to the Ukrainian conflict that is a Russiagate extended. I mean, part of the big reason they did this, one part was to sabotage President Trump and undermine his presidency, but the other was to prevent a detente between Russia and the United States, realigning our relationship in a way that would be more productive for both countries on a going forward basis. The war in Ukraine is a direct outcome of the Russiagate coup. It was mostly intended to prevent and preclude the president from having a more reasonable policy and a détente policy with Russia. And had we done so, then the violation of the Minsk Accords wouldn't have occurred. Zelensky wouldn't have been able to easily break his promise of peace in his campaign, and the war in Ukraine would likely have never have occurred in the first place. So there's a lot of people dead today because of what Russiagate did, beyond the damage it did to our democratic republic in the United States. Well, I think we'll
Hello, everybody. It is about 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time here in East Tennessee. So we'll start on July 24th. So we'll start out with Robert Barnes there with RT. And if you watched my last video and the hints I've made about the correlations between Russiagate and the Ukraine war, and my instincts were correct because Robert Barnes said it right there as well. Okay, because you got to remember why was it Ukraine? Why is it Russia? Because remember, Trump made some. First of all, you have the Flynn factor and what he knew about policy, what Biden was running around and doing, etc., as head of the DIA. Okay, you also have the foreign policy establishment, the non-elected bureaucrats within the intelligence community, the military-industrial complex, and how they viewed Russia. And Trump had made statements back in 2016. Why is Russia our enemy? They should be our ally. Things like that. And the fear of the NATO thing. So what they did was they made, even though there was the political element of the Democratic Party and the Hillary Clinton campaign, which with McCooey and Steele and all that came up with the dossier, the people, the Obama administration decided to run with it going forward, not just to sabotage Trump from a political point of view, and that's what the Republican Party is focusing on, okay? But it also was to make sure that Trump could not normalize relations with Russia and get them back into the fold a little bit and see them more as a natural ally to the United States than versus this, because of Russia is against the globalist establishment. Not are they anti-NATO for national security reasons, but they don't fit the globalist, neocon, neoliberal, progressive mold of the Soristas, the European Union, NATO, all these left-wing institutions in the West. So yeah, so basically, right. So when they did the Russiagate, then we had the impeachment with Chermely and Vindman getting involved. Vindman, who is Ukrainian, ethnic Ukrainian. Okay, that impeachment. So all of that was going on. Okay, so there is a huge correlation. Trump had no interest in expanding NATO. All he wanted them to do was pay more. And Russia didn't feel threatened by Trump because of that. Yes, he sent javelins and brags about it. Russia wasn't worried about javelins. They were worrying about a constant policy of pressure on their borders and meddling in the Ukraine. So that's why, another reason why the Republican establishment, especially at the beginning of Trump's presidency, stayed away from defending Trump during the political when this all broke and so forth. But there were people in the neocon Republican Party who didn't like where Trump's natural instincts wanted to take him. And he's always right. Trump is always right on his instincts. It's when he gets pressured by somebody else, he gets derailed. So I thought I'd start with that video because, and we'll talk a little bit more about Ukraine later in this video, but I thought that was a really key point. 1 minute clip, got to the gist of it, and it just shows you it's all correlated. And it's right. How many a million plus Ukrainians are dead or incapacitated where they can't fight anymore? Okay, and it is not a million dead Russians, not even close. But anyway, so moving on, let's start here in the United States with some economic news. E.J. Antoni, Fed lost another $653 million last week, bringing total realized losses to more than $236 billion since September 22. Just another sign of monetary mismanagement by Powell and company. Well, how'd they lose the money? They've been buying bonds for years. They've been buying bonds for years to inject liquidity, okay, through quantitative easing 1 and 2, okay, as well as buying bonds to bail out states, to support the Biden administration's huge spending plan, actually going back to the Trump administration with the CARES Act, America Rescue, the Let's Increase Inflation Act, okay, under the Biden administration. And they had to create an artificial market for people who didn't want to buy these bonds. So they bought it and put it on their balance sheet. It's like taking it out of the ballgame. But they needed cash. So they had to sell assets and they want to get rid of their balance sheet. So they've lost this money. Now, here's the problem. Not only is it mismanagement, but who gave, the Federal Reserve? Power of the purse belongs to Congress. Federal Reserve created by, that should not have, there should be oversight, audit the Fed, but there should be a fundamental restructure of our central banking system. Because if they can lose $236 billion of taxpayer money with one person who has this appointment with no oversight, that's a problem. And Trump was touring with Powell today, was harping on him, and they're, just like the FBI, a symbol of globalist corruption here in the United States. They get a $5 billion building, which Republicans voted for, many Republicans voted for, and he gets this $3 billion palace. Meanwhile, he's losing money for the American people. Well, it's like the FBI was going after that, and believe me, is still infested with these left-wing rats. So I just thought I'd share that with you and link in the political component to this tweet by E.J. Antoni. So let's go in. It's a little bit of the Russiagates. NBC News. Tulsi Gabbard, Trump's top intelligence official, leveled allegations against Obama that no U.S. spy chief has ever made against a former president or administration. That's right. That's right. But you know what? No, no administration ever had low-level people in Atlanta indict an ex-president. Like in New York, indict an ex-president. No administration or spy chief has ever raided the personal residence and went through the underwear drawer of the former president's wife. Okay, never before has indictments that were just created against whatever it is, Section 18, what Jack Smith did, okay, and going after him and so forth. Watch, by the way, that's what Obama's going to use with the executive privilege to get off, and that's why they're not even going to bother to indict him and correct because of the immunity decision of the court, which is a correct decision, okay? But the fact that will still have a deterrent factor if you arrest some of the lower people like Brennan and Clapper, and because you still want to maintain that immunity for the president as well. And as long as you can create a plausible alternative like Obama will, he'll get that immunity thing. Not like I think they're going to prosecute him anyway, but just say they did. If there was an indictment, that would get thrown out because of the immunity thing. But it still, I think, would, because some president in the future will be like, I just don't want to hassle it. So I think there'll be some deterrent power. So we'll see how that goes. All right. But yeah, the hypocrisy of NBC. Never the first time. What about all the first times? How about a crappy detail that didn't check the building that allowed him to get shot at Butler? Okay, so please, it's never happened before. I love how they will do anything to spin the corporate media. All right. So a little politics here. Ron DeSantis is considering redistricting Florida before the 2026 midterms. If you watch my prior videos, I mentioned this because Newsom said that he was going to redistrict, and I said, well, Florida would only be getting closer to what California is if you look at it by a state percentage point of the vote totals. So, but here he is mentioning it on Florida News. Don't need to pay the thing, but that would be good because if you can get 5 more seats out of Florida. Also, you got Wisconsin with the Supreme Court that flipped the Democrats. They're going to try to redistrict there. So you at least want to get on the offensive here to offset that. And I still say file a lawsuit in Illinois because that's ridiculous. Trump lost by 8, but it's 18-4 in the House. Come on. And that's why we need more governors to do that. At least in my state, Tennessee, Bill Lee, who doesn't exactly have the strongest spine, at least we got them down to 1 seat. All right. Breaking. Senate Democrats just objected to approving a resolution that called for all available Epstein files to be released. What? See, they were trying to get a hold ahead of Trump and the Republicans on this issue with Ro Khanna, and Ro Khanna might be sincere. I think he's sincere in most of his things compared to most Democrats. He's on the left. There are actually a few issues on the because he is a populist that I agree with him on. He's had a decent relationship with Matt Gaetz in the past, and he trusts him as a person. So, but here it shows you that, yeah, when it came down to it, a lot of these Senate Democrats like, yeah, no, maybe we don't want to release it and so forth. So this is actually good news. It shows the hypocrisy from this, but we'll get into it in a little bit. It was brought by Senator Mark Wayne Mullen of Oklahoma. Would you look at that? It's all about the political games. They don't care. Every voter needs to see this. I asked for unanimous consent, Senator Mullen said, and then Senator Gallego says, reserving right to object. There you go. That was today. And moving on, more congressional Capitol Hill news. No recess appointments. The House is now on August recess until September 2nd, ending session early to avoid vote on bill to release Epstein files. Would you look at that? The Senate will take a 39-day recess starting August 1st, even though 262 Trump nominees and 50 federal judge nominees are still outstanding. And they're using the max 10 hours, even if no one's doing the debate. They're doing the max, the delay like they did in the first Trump term. Trump did end up getting a lot of them through. It was the one thing McConnell did right was get a lot of these people through. Trump is getting better appointments than last time, I think. What's his name? Bovin. He got approved today with Collins and Murkowski being the only two objectors, or at least voting nay on, but it still went through. But there you go. Do the recess appointments. Now, what's her name? Haba in New Jersey. She was just, even though those liberals in New Jersey got her out because of the 120-day rule, she was just reappointed as the acting U.S. attorney. So she's going back in there again, which is fantastic. The Senate, and she will be under the jurisdiction of the Department of Justice, which is controlled by the Trump administration and Pam Bondi. So, which again, a lot of this is in Pam Bondi's court, going back with the whole Crossfire Hurricane, Russiagate, and all that stuff. So we'll see where that goes. But, this is ridiculous. They should be voting on more rescission packages. They should be slamming these things through, possibly even tweaking the Senate rules, because if the Democrats take the Senate, they're going to change the rules. And you know that, so you might as well start changing them a little bit here and there to get what we want now, because it'll have long-term effects. And there are cultural changes which are more important, because as Andrew Breitbart said, all politics is downstream from culture. And because we are changing more culture it's important to get this stuff done now, even if it could bite us a little bit in the future if we fundamentally change some culture. So I'm in favor of, they shouldn't be going home unless they're ready to go and going. And I don't understand the no recess appointments. Why can't they do recess appointments? I mean, that's the whole point of it. Here's a vacancy. I can fill it. Senate's not in recess. Do it. Find a way around it, okay? Get ready. Or strong arm them, We'll see how that goes. Next. Another huge America First endorsement of Nate Morris from Jim Banks. Banks is one of the leading opponents of amnesty in the Senate and was also the first member of Congress to endorse both J.D. Vance and Bernie Moreno in their Senate primaries. That's awesome. I like Banks, and I love Vance and Moreno. And if you don't know, Nate Morris is a businessman, comes from blue-collar background, built a company, I think cars. I could be wrong on that. But he was on the War Room. I saw an interview of him, and he's fantastic. Oh, garbage. That's right. He's in sanitation, a private garbage company. And his commercial was fantastic. He's going to try to replace Mitch McConnell. So McConnell out, Nate Morris in. It's a net pickup. It's literally like flipping a seat, especially now when you see McConnell's always one of the three to vote no against something in D.C. right now, so that's good. All right. Actually, I want to go back to that as well. If you don't know, Cassidy's being challenged by the guy named Fleming. There's another gentleman in South Carolina. Oh my God, what's his name? I forgot his name. Carter. Oh my God, I don't know. He was on Warren this morning, and he's finally challenging. He's got money. He had ran for the state senate. He's from Greenville. He's America First improvement. He was talking about foreign policy a little bit, but they didn't get deep into it, so I don't know his full position. But anything is an upgrade on Graham. So if he's the leading opposition, that's who we're going with. Whoever's the leading America First opposition, we have to rally around to defeat these sitting RINOs. All right? And the reason we have to do it is because of things like this. Breaking. D.C. sources telling me the Republicans on the Senate Intelligence Committee, chaired by Senator Cotton, are crafting legislation that start with restricting Gabbard from reviewing and releasing to the public deep state and intel files showing they've been criminal. What? Cotton is a guy who's going. Hugh Hewitt, head of the Intelligence Committee. He's the only Republican who voted for the omnibus under Biden because he wanted the $20 billion to go to Ukraine. Screw the taxpayer, screw inflation, screw our debt. It was more important to get money to Zelensky. That's who this guy is. He goes on Hugh Hewitt talking about how many more naval ships we need, whatever. Meanwhile, we don't have hypersonic missiles yet, okay? Which is making the carrier battle group obsolete. This guy is a deep state hack, should not be near anything and should never be trusted. He should be on the primary list as well, okay? Gabbard's principled. She left the party, her own party, okay, over key issues, just like RFK did. And she's come in and she's delivering on the policy. She's got into arguments in the White House with other people and challenging it. She gave the speech, Turning Point, about saying she's fighting the deep state. And she's more of a Republican, representing the Republican voter, than this guy from Arkansas, Cotton. It's a problem with these deep red state RINOs where they are comfortable winning these red states all the time, and they know they can put in anybody they want. But it's time we, the people in those parties in these red states, actually pick people who represent the voters. All right, from Bloomberg, Serbia will hoard all its gold at home, shunning global hubs. Okay, if you don't know it, London holds like $550 billion of gold. Switzerland does. New York does. Other big cities do. Countries hold their physical gold in these countries. Serbia, well, it's a small amount, $6 billion. Okay, they're like, you know what? Nah, we want to hold it. Okay, that's a sign. It's a European country. It's been considering going in and out of NATO, European Union. It is not, because it is a traditional Russian ally, but it does have strong relations with the European Union and other European countries because it is in Europe. But they're showing it. So this is an interesting sign. I think you're going to see more countries do this. Just like more countries are not using London to ensure, like, shipping. We always hear about the Russian shadow fleet. Well, what's the Russian shadow fleet? They're self-insuring now. Or they're getting their insurance somewhere else. So the West, because they're not using London, is labeling it as a shadow fleet, like they're up to no good. No, the reason why they're shadow fleet is because they're not using Lloyd's of London to ensure their shipping. Shadow fleet. So, Representative Spartz from Indiana, who is native Ukrainian, okay, naturalized U.S. citizen, was on with Matt Gaetz. I won't show you the whole video, but here's the key. Spartz. Zelensky has really created Russia in Ukraine. Ukrainian-born U.S. Congressman Rep. Spartz explains that Zelensky has created Russia-Ukraine by centralizing power, creating police states, suppressing all opposition. I will disagree with her on her position on Russia, on most of those things. However, she's correct. Over a year ago, suspended elections. Now, they technically count under martial law, but we would have paid for the elections. Knew that. You had a sitting member of the Rada, which is Ukrainian parliament, under house arrest. They've gone after the Ukrainian Orthodox Church because they have a linkage in history to the Russian, and other Orthodox churches are kind of linked together. They have tried to create an alternative church. They've jailed priests. They go after political opposition. They have taken over state TV, taken over media stations and turned them into states, whether it's TV, radio stations, except for the ones owned by George Soros. They have arrested journalists. Believe me, this is who they are. They have no problem with it because it's run by that ultra nationalist group and groups inside the Ukrainian government. Okay, and we're seeing this is a war for democracy. It is anything but. It is anything but. And Spartz says it here. She quotes it here. Those are just some of the examples what Ukraine has done, especially since the beginning of this war. And a lot of these journalists were jailed and stuff prior to the war starting in February of 2022, just for the record. And many journalists were jailed before that. Many media outlets were done. And also they banned opposition political parties as well. Okay? So they were already on this trend because they've been trying to Ukrainize the entire nation. Okay? From an ethnic point of view. All right? Like Israel-Gaza conflict and many others throughout history. They wanted the Donbass without its people. And there you go. I don't have to show you more of that video. But moving on to this, I'll get to the video in a second. A number of Ukrainian sources have been reporting since last night that something completely different has started happening near Konstantinivka. That's in northern Donetsk, just south of Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. Completely different has started happening near Konstantinivka, where an intensification of the assault on the city itself was expected all these days. Instead of striking the road towards the city itself, the Russian army began hitting the junction between Pokrovsk and Konstantinivka in the direction of Shikovo and Donetsk. If this information is confirmed soon and the actions result in a tactical success with further access to the TO 514 highway, Russia will effectively have the opportunity to get behind Kramatorsk and Konstantinivka. All right. So I will explain that to you in a second. The Russian army has began the assault on Stepnogorsk. Having previously liberated Kamenskoye, Russian troops have begun the assault on the enemy's fortified stronghold, Stepnogorsk, advancing further on the Zaporozhye front. At the same time, airborne assault units are successfully driving the enemy out of the settlement of Plavny, with the northern part of the village still held by the armed forces of Ukraine. All right, so that's it. In the region, the western Zaporozhye, it shows you the territory. Here's a close-up view of the map, whatever. So I wanted to show you, go back to that quick video I showed you. That was protests last night against Zelensky. There have not been anti-government protests since the war began in 2022 in Ukraine, except for in the last few days. And they're intensifying. There were reports leading up to these protests that Zelensky's been in trouble. People are upset. Any most legitimate poll historically I can find, and it was recent, shows Ukrainians want to end this war. The press gangs, they're just coming home in body bags. They want to end this war, okay? And they're being pressured by the Zelensky government, backed by the Brits, the State Department, intelligence community, military-industrial complex, etc., European Union. So that's that. So the previous slide with that in Konstantinivka is they're completely cutting that off, because after Konstantinivka falls, they have Kramatorsk and then they have Sloviansk. But by doing this, it splits the access between Pokrovsk and Konstantinivka, southern Donetsk, northern Donetsk. That would cause a panic, and then they could come around and create a big cauldron, almost coming around both of them, one to the southwest and around, and one to the northeast around, like that. And Ukraine would be in a scattered mess, and all those soldiers can get caught. So it looks like almost like a grand strategy. And it was funny because Ukrainian outlets were and channels were reporting on this. Don't know it's true, report what goes on, but going into the weekend, I will keep an eye on that as well. So that was very interesting to show. Now, in the last part, and this might support that, because if they're going and they're going northeast and splitting that, because right, southwest is Pokrovsk and northeast is Konstantinivka, if they're going in between that. But at the same time, and this is being reported by all sides, is Pokrovsk, even though they're at the edge of the city and going around by that village northeast of Pokrovsk, Redistricting, and they've been making gains towards there, that last village before in the northeast, it looks like here Russian forces are reportedly approaching the Defenders of Ukraine street in Pokrovsk from the southwest. So if that other report's true, they're coming up the middle all the way and coming around, and then they're hitting it from the southwest of Pokrovsk. So are they trying to do simultaneous pincers around both Konstantinivka and Pokrovsk? We're going to find out this weekend. So this would ultimately leave Pokrovsk with no logistic lines left except either a lengthy backroads route to and from Leningrad, or else there's only a single alternate route from the north, and it's like dirt back roads and stuff. That would be a nightmare for the Ukrainians, especially if they're doing it simultaneously with Konstantinivka. It looks like to me the Russians are moving to finally seize the rest of Donetsk by the end of the summer. That's what it's starting to look to me. So, so basically, that's what's going on. So we're starting to build some primary opponents. That's good. Trump's challenging the Fed. That's good. We got the whole Russiagate going on. We got to keep the pressure up on that. And then the Istanbul, nothing's going to come out of it. It's a show at this point. All right. Look, we met and we talked, blah, 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 blah. So we'll see if anything comes out of the rest of that's going on. So we'll keep an eye on the economic front going out. There's a couple numbers coming out tomorrow. Let's see what they are. Also, we'll keep on with this battlefield and see what's going on. Because as that's going on, remember, there's still, like I showed you Zaporozhye as well earlier in the video, Kherson, they're launching Operation Sumy, Kharkiv. I also heard Russia used a new ordinance in Kharkiv hitting a industrial section, an industrial warehouse right near a residential section. So, a complex, but it was like a warehouse. So, everything, they get any whiff of like Western weapons are being stored here, they take it out. End of story. And they're pretty precise. So, anyway, I'll be following all those fronts. I'm going to avoid the whole Macron thing that's been going on, but whatever. The Hungarian foreign minister, he gave a speech just recently talking about how these Hungarians who are in Ukraine, because they're part of the Carpathian Mountains, are like resisting. One guy was killed, and the whole issue is like, we don't want anything to do with this. We're not even Ukrainian, okay? We wish we were part of Hungary. So, but they've been trying to press those people into whatever, and many Hungarians have been trying to escape. But the Ukrainians have been like making it very difficult to escape. They actually put barbed wires. I did that on some of the rivers, like near Romania and so forth. I did that on previous videos. So anyway, I'll be following everything, and I'll be reposting and posting to my account, which is on X. It's at Patriot Planner 1. On Getter, at Patriot Planner. And if you like this video, please follow, like, and share. All right, thank you very much. Have a great weekend, and I hope to put out another video earlier next week. Talk to you later.